You were thinking about longevity, probably didn't call it longevity at the time, way before it became popular. And so I guess, one of the questions I have is maybe just talk at a high level about how the ecosystem has changed in that time, right? Because there's been a lot of change, and it feels like the change is accelerating. But what are some of the things that you've seen that have really shifted from 20 years ago when you started Pearl MD to now in those domains? And then I want to do a deep dive starting with women's health and hormone therapy, because I know you've got a lot of information there that's really important.
Yeah, I think to answer your question well, I'd have to parse apart the three elements that you touched on in the question. The reemergence, I would say, of women's health as a frontier, and I like to say menopause is hot.
And when you say reemergence, though, what do you mean by that?
Oh, because I'm so old. Back when I was studying it, it was a lot more commonplace. Like when the WHI first enrolled.
It was before the WHI
27%. Well, it was I think it probably started enrolling in 92, but prior to the revelation and misreporting, or kind of the adverse effects of the reporting of a trial.
Misinterpretation, at least.
Well, honestly, I think the problem was, and I think we should not spend too much time on the WHI, because at its very design, we knew it wasn't actually studying the women we are treating. It was not a study of menopausal women.
Yeah.
It was a study, because it was, so this is exactly what I mean, because at the time, it was taken for granted that women at menopause, like a rite of passage, were given menopause hormone therapy.
And what was the percentage back then?
27%. It's estimated
still not
in the late
majority,
90s,
though, right?
but of eligible, it's never going to be all.
Sure.
It became less than 5%.
Yeah, I know.
It's not much better now. So think of the impact. So, what I would say is I've seen the pendulum swing so far the wrong way. And again, and the reason I say let's not harp on the WHI, because even at the time we knew it wasn't actually evaluating the women that make up the vast majority of the patients we are treating.
Right.
The women that are at the time of their menopause, that are healthy and candidates for hormone therapy, that have symptoms, that want to be proactive. Preference is important, when we talk about eligibility.
Sure.
So, when we think about what that study was looking at, it was actually looking at a different population, looking at the wrong hormones, given the wrong way to the wrong women. And I think trying to, extrapolate from that trial, like again, after 20 years, is just not helping us move forward.
Yeah. Can I just set this historical stage, though? So, I mean, if I understand what you're saying correctly, prior to the WHI results, hormone therapy for women at least was offered as standard of care.
Absolutely.
Right? And then those results came out, flawed as they were, and that basically floored it to where very few women were offered hormone therapy.
Yeah.
And when you say reemergence, what you mean is now we're starting to see that shift. And extrapolating on something you said, from a percentage of women who are actually utilizing hormone therapy, it's still very, very low compared to what it was 25 years ago.
Yeah,
Does that fit?
Totally, it's perfect, and I mean the disastrous, I would say, impact of the this trial that really wasn't addressing what we were actually dealing with, what the patients that we are treating. Just the idea that it's not only that women weren't being offered. Now we have 2 decades of medical trainees that weren't being taught about
lost
it.
Generation
a lost generation of doc too, actually. And so I am mentioned in these, so I call them the dark decades of menopause women's health, really. And we're talking about, just for your audience, like, again, this is all as I'm being, kind of emerging in practice with holistic medicine, proactive approach. That's my framework. We're talking about 2002. For 20 years, like until really the last 3 years. And so, just the idea that it's not really that there's been a change in new science or new, we have some new treatment options. It's not so much that innovation has propelled women's health forward. I think we just have platformed the issue in light, like literally, that's why I like to say we've shone a spotlight in it. Now we need the funding flow, new science, new studies, more treatments. There's still not one approved treatment for women in perimenopause.
It's crazy. But I want to ask, what do you think led to this reemergence, or is there one thing you can point to, or is it just sort of in the atmosphere, right? I mean, what happened?
Well, being part of this cohort, the women who are in their perimenopause, I think we've watched our, the women ahead of us. And we are empowered women, and we have social media that's platformed it. Again, not always based on science.
Pros and cons there.
Pros and cons. But I think there's many reasons. And I think part of it also, coming through the pandemic, and a lot of it, there's a lot of U.S. centric factors here. But like, for instance, at the time, and back to just some of the differences between what's happening in American sort of like hormone prescribing and menopause versus outside. So the standard care within the U.S. back then for menopause women was Prem-Pro, and that's a combination of an oral. It's a SERM. It's a estrogen metabolite derived Premarin from pregnant mare's urine,
Right.
and a known at the time to be toxic analog to progesterone. We refer to that as a progestin called MPA. And, just a quick little anecdote, because I think your audience will find this pretty funny, is that was standard here because it was a patented combination oral therapy. Was it best? No, we knew at the time it wasn't best. We already had data outside of the US. It wasn't necessarily what we were using in Canada for our patients.
Interesting.
It wasn't what they used in Europe. The E3N study already showed a difference between using bioidentical, which means structurally, functionally the same as our bodies make. It's not a bad word. Like micronized progesterone, versus MPA. We already knew there was a differentiation. And because we knew that, when you're like, how did you know you were 20? I'm like, I don't know where it comes from. And it's really just a deep passion. I always am curious and want to learn, and I'm never scared to ask the questions, and I don't know why. But I remember around the time that these results were revealed, and the principal investigator, Joanne Manson, was sitting on the podium at the time it was called the North American Menopause Society. Since then, it's now known as the Menopause Society, and presenting on the WHI findings. And I come up to her and I asked her, I said, Joanne, why did you, in your study design, drop the micronized progesterone arm of your trial? Because had you not done that, we would have had all the answers. We would have been able to distinguish some of the toxicities that we now know are very much associated with the MPA. And she said, because, Jennifer, they pulled the funding. Who's they? Big Pharma. Who controls Big Pharma? Who's pulling the purse strings? It is not the women we are treating. And I was in my 20s at the time, Matt, and I kid you not, I could feel my jaw, it didn't, drop to the floor, and this wave rise within me and just propel me to realize I need to take charge and help move the women's health agenda forward. And guess what? And this is like a long time ago, before cell phones and social media, but someone took a photo of me asking the question. This very minute, a photo was captured. And to this day, if you go to sign up for the Menopause Society annual meeting and you look at the webpage, you will see me, little me in my 20s, asking Joanne this question, and my face. And Matt, like, this was the epiphany moment in my women's trajectory.
Well, and I think there's a lot there. First of all, it's very courageous to even ask that question at that career stage. But I think, and leaving aside the pharma funding research piece, which is problematic, right? I mean, again, this is where I think, government-funded research has an important role because you don't necessarily have those intrinsic biases in terms of the way the research is done. And when bad science gets in the literature, it takes 2 decades to clean it up. That just is a ballpark that I've seen in my career. And I think this is unfortunately what happens. When flawed data becomes dogma, it takes a long time to correct itself.
We have a saying, Matt. It's not the most kosher saying, but the saying goes like this: medicine progresses one funeral at a time.
Right.
It's sad. And here we are, 2 decades.
Saying. Yeah. I don't have a similar saying for the academic literature, but I'll need to come up with something. Anyways, we'll see if we can find that photo and show it on the video when we